Welcome back to Sharing Parenting's online sessions. I'm Nina Rogers. This is session 2 of Effective Discipline. If you haven't already, make sure you have a pen, paper, and if you have a workbook, it is pages 90 to 96. Remember, you can press pause and play whenever you need to. In this chapter, we'll be learning to recognise choices available in children's managing behaviour in a positive way. Remember, discipline is about teaching. One effective discipline approach is to offer choices to our children. For example, if your child refuses to wear a jumper, we might say, would you like to wear the blue jumper or the red jumper? They still end up wearing a jumper but feel capable because they made a choice, and we get the result we want because we wanted them to wear a jumper in the first place. When offering choices, do not offer too many. 2 is normally enough. It is important to consider their age and stage when offering choices. Are they going to understand the choices they are making? When we offer choices as parents, we need to be non-threatening, otherwise the child will not see it as a choice, but a demand. In session 4, we learnt about the importance of feeling capable for children. By offering choices, we can make children feel capable. But what do we mean when we use the term capable? Capable means to feel confident and willing to try new things, but it also means having good self-esteem and resilience. When children feel capable, they will take responsibility. They will feel able to make decisions, will learn self-reliance and develop self-control. These are such important skills to take into adulthood. Offering choices can sometimes avoid a power struggle because the child feels that their opinion counts. We are moving on to learn about another effective discipline approach, consequences. There are 2 types of consequences, natural and logical. Natural consequences are those that occur naturally without a parent's intervention. They provide a valuable learning opportunity for children. They avoid confrontation with parents because it's not us imposing the rule. An example of a natural consequence is if your child refuses to wear gloves, the natural consequence is that they will get cold hands and will learn they need to wear gloves to keep their hands warm. Logical consequences are ones that we impose when there is no natural consequence available. Consequences should be respectful, related to the behaviour, and reasonable if they are going to be effective. An example of a logical consequence is if the child is riding their bike with no helmet, the logical consequence could be that they are not allowed out on their bike. In session 4, we introduced you to Alfred Adler. He felt consequences should be used with children from a young age. He believed consequences are the most powerful learning you could give to your child. What do children learn from consequences? They develop and learn important life skills. The knowledge that all actions have consequences and that they have control. Through the use of consequences, children learn to adapt their behaviour and make decisions to get outcomes they want and learn what is expected of them. Time for our first exercise. Imagine your child wants to go outside without a coat when it is pouring with rain. What is a natural consequence and what could be a logical consequence? Pause the video and write down your answers. There are many possible options you may have thought of. One possible natural consequence would be if you allow the child to go outside without their coat, they would get cold and wet. With natural consequences, we need to be mindful of the child's age and stage. We are not suggesting you send a 2-year-old outside without a coat. We can only use natural consequences if they're going to be safe. A logical consequence would be if your child refuses to wear a coat, they would have to stay inside. If we have a choice between the 2 types of consequences, we should always choose the natural consequence, as this is the most effective approach. Consequences can be seen as choices in a way. If a child knows if they don't tidy away their toys, they won't get to play with them the next day, they have a choice. As long as the consequence is reasonable and it's relatable, if a child chooses not to tidy them away, the consequence is their decision and it has to be fair. To get effective discipline right, we need to get our parenting styles right. We covered parenting styles in session 2. Let's look at them again now. Imagine a child refuses to go to bed. The aggressive parent would be shouting, get to bed. They'd be pointing their finger and they'd be threatening. The situation is likely to escalate into a power struggle, which isn't going to be good for anybody. Now think about that passive parenting style, the softie. They would be slumped body language, avoiding eye contact, and they would probably end up saying, you can stay up just a little bit longer, but what would actually happen is they'd end up staying up a lot later. In both cases, the child is not learning and are likely to refuse to go to bed the next night and or engage in other challenging behaviour. The assertive parent would listen, explain why the child needs to go to bed, set the boundaries, and would be consistent. Remember, children learn from our behaviour. If we model aggressive behaviour, they will learn to act with anger. If you act passively, your child will learn to give up. But if we act assertively, your child will learn to listen. When challenging behaviour occurs, our parenting styles will affect the outcomes for our children. As we learned in session 4, often when we experience challenging behaviour, it's because the child is not feeling capable. In some cases, this may lead to the parent not feeling capable as well. This can in turn lead to an aggressive parenting style and a power struggle with the child. If we're getting into power struggles, we need to take a step back and reevaluate our approach. As parents, we're often quick to react to challenging behaviour and will often end up in that passive or aggressive approach. It's easy for us to say act assertively, but acting assertively all the time is really hard work, especially when we are being tested with challenging behaviour. What can really help is giving ourselves time to respond. The gap between the child's behaviour and our response needs to be bigger to give ourselves time to act assertively. We need to give ourselves time to think about how we need to respond. That's why the traffic light model we saw in session 2 and 6 is such a useful tool. When presented with challenging behaviour, remember, stop, give yourself time to calm down if you need it. Amber, give yourself time to think. What do I need to do? How do I act assertively? How do I get the child to understand? And then green, that's when you respond. How do we discipline assertively? We need to notice good behaviours, notice improvements, and sometimes we need to ignore bad behaviour when you can. If a child is being told off all the time, they'll begin to feel bad about themselves. If you know your child is playing up because they're hungry, tired, or had a bad day, you may leave the discipline for another day. This is not about letting them get away with things, but considering their unmet needs and being fair. We need to be consistent with rules and don't have too many. Include children in making the rules. They'll be more likely to follow them if it was a joint decision and they understand why they need them. Time for a second exercise, and now it's your turn. Identify some challenging behaviours. They may be some that you see at home or just something you can think of right now. List the appropriate choices and consequences you might use. Remember to aim for the assertive parenting style. Hopefully you have a few ideas you can now use at home when you need to. Here are some natural consequences you may find useful. Missing an activity when they're not getting ready, being hungry because they didn't want to eat all of their lunch, feeling tired because they stayed up too late. Thinking about logical consequences, you could adopt any of the following. Removing a toy or electric device for a few hours, not being allowed out for the day, going to bed a little earlier, or being asked to tidy up a mess that they have made. When consequences involve removing something, think about the time. Removing something for an hour can be just as powerful as removing something for the whole day. Remember, these are consequences, not punishments. As we learn in session 6, punishments do not lead to learning. Choices and consequences do. We are now going to think about problem solving. Problem solving is an important skill for children to develop. However, sometimes as a parent, we feel it is our role to solve all of their problems for them. And it is only natural we want to protect our children. But we can sometimes be overprotective and can deny them the opportunity to develop problem-solving skills. If a child does not learn the skills in childhood, they will not have the skills in adulthood. but how do we know when we need to intervene? When confronted with a problem, think, whose problem is it? If it is your problem, then you have the responsibility for it. If it is not your problem, then you don't have responsibility to solve it. Just like choices and consequences, we need to consider a child's age and stage. If a toddler keeps getting toys snatched from them, we probably need to intervene. If a 4-year-old gets toys snatched from them, we might model how they could handle the situation better. If a 6-year-old gets toys snatched from them, we might just watch and see how they handle the situation and only intervene if they cannot manage themselves. Another problem that you could see might be if they have an argument with their best friend at school. It's important to take a step back and allow them to try and solve it for themselves. This isn't about abandoning the child to muddle through without any assistance. Perhaps you might ask, do you need any help? You might discuss the problem with them. You could give them advice if they ask, but let them take the lead. Solving their own problems is another way to make your child feel capable and take responsibility. In this session, we have covered the following. Giving your child a choice can help avoid power struggles. Natural consequences happen without your intervention. Logical consequences need our input. Helping your child solve their own problems gives them skills for the future and helps them learn to take responsibility. Tasks for the week. It's your turn to have a go. Try and use choices and consequences one time with your child this week. Remember to choose consequences that link to the behaviour or issues that you are having and ensure that you follow through. When stating the choices and consequences, try to be firm but friendly and try and remember that assertive parenting style. How are you going to make it a learning opportunity? Finally, catch your child being good at least once this week and acknowledge it to them in some small way. Thank you for listening. The next session is on labelling.